Hey, what's up? I'm back again. Well, I'm back with another video. And today, what I'd like to talk about, I feel like I just keep bouncing back and forth between the same subjects over and over again. It's like, I don't know how or when I'm actually going to get some variety, but I'd like to keep making videos until we live in our new house for sure. And then it might just be moon videos. I don't really know what I'm going to do once we live there. Okay. And right now, I'd much rather be going to eat out somewhere. I'm hungry. But instead, I'm going to sit and make a video on this sunny, beautiful day. Basically, this is a comment video. I'm making a video about a comment that I made, and I'd like to just sort of document what I was feeling today. And what it was, well, about 3 months ago, there was I don't know who made this comment, but somebody was talking about how girls sort of age out of cartoons around 8 years old. And that's why there aren't a whole lot of cartoons for and about girls, from about elementary school onward. Elementary school and maybe, a show about junior high girls that appeals to elementary girls is about the end of female-specific cartoons, okay? And somehow or another, that attracted all the girls that want to say, that's not true. I'm a girl and I like cartoons, so that's not true. Well, no, okay? Exceptions don't disprove rules, okay? That would be like if someone said that, like, in childhood, boys catch more colds than girls, and then in adulthood, it switches to the other way around, as the girls haven't developed their immune system as much and women start interacting with children, okay? So the difference between the number of colds that boys catch and men is more drastic than, because everyone gets fewer colds as they age because your immune system develops. But with boys, it's more extreme. Like in early childhood, the boys were getting more colds. And then in adulthood, the women are getting slightly more because they interact with children. Okay, and I've always hated that, and that's one of the many reasons why I didn't want to have any children, okay? Because I didn't want to be a statistic. But you see, the difference is not really all that much. Like in childhood, the boys might be getting a dozen versus 10, if, for a girl that age, she might be averaging 10, her first year of kindergarten or preschool or daycare or whatnot, whereas a boy might get a dozen. And then as an adult, it might be men getting 2.5 colds per year versus women getting about 3 or something like that. So it isn't a huge difference, but it's a slight difference, okay? And it's like that with a lot of things. People say, well, no, that's not true, because I'm a woman in XYZ, or I'm a man in XYZ. Well, exceptions don't disprove rules. And when the difference isn't really all that much, it's like, what are you even debating? You know what I'm saying? I mean, the same thing with potty train. People will say, well, it's not true that boys train later than girls because my daughter wasn't easy to train. Well, okay, that doesn't disprove the fact. You know what I'm saying? Perhaps if she were a boy, she would have been even that much more difficult. You know what I'm saying? So what I like to read is my comment. And I'm the only one that basically posted a comment to say, yes, it is true that girls watch fewer cartoons than boys from about age 8 onward. And I wrote, I think it really is true that more girls than boys age out of cartoons, and exceptions don't disprove rules. Boys mature later and have more time on their hands due to their lack of interest in school and socializing in comparison to girls. We are social creatures from an early age, and drawings with a small range of facial expressions and mouth movements are just not very interesting when you understand human emotion to the extent that women do. The only cartoons I ever got into had specific things that got me interested in them. And now that I'm an adult, there are no longer any cartoons that I can stand to watch. And that is true. I believe, they were talking about how girls, basically, they sort of age out of cartoons around 8 years old. And they certainly don't buy a lot of merchandise pertaining to cartoons once they're sort of too old to play with dolls. You know what I'm saying? And I don't agree with that, because I'm a doll collector, not a cartoon enthusiast, and that cannot be emphasized enough, you know. But unfortunately, moms start discouraging girls from buying dolls somewhere in elementary school, if not, or certainly by junior high. And friends start making fun of girls as they get older and still continue to even have dolls, let alone buy more. And I really, that's really made me mad all my life. But now that I look in my bedroom and it starts to resemble a hoarder's house, and I don't know how or when we're going to bring them to our new house, I'm starting to understand why. I'm starting to kind of understand why moms don't want to keep buying dolls for girls that are 10 and up. So basically, cartoons end up appealing to flat-chested people, so to speak. Boys, men, and girls who haven't hit puberty yet, 8 and under. Okay? And the reason, as I've stated in here, is that, sure, there are girls who are still into cartoons and animation at that age, just like girls still catch colds. You know what I'm saying? That's like, no, my daughter had a cold the other day, therefore boys don't average a higher number. Well, that's stupid. Okay. The point is, yes, there are women. Of course, there are women who are into animation. There are female voice actresses. So, of course, there are going to be women who are exceptions to that. You know what I'm saying? But, they appeal more to the male gender than the female gender, because, well, for one thing, boys do mature later. And I don't know why everyone is in such denial of that. Boys just simply, because their fertility begins a little bit later, but it ends much later than ours. And so as a result, you see, what men don't understand about girls is that around the age of 12 or 13, or I certainly know this from personal experience, we don't look at the boys in our class and say, how can I be a good enough girlfriend for one of them? No, that is not what we're thinking. We look at the male teachers. We might have one male teacher out of all our teachers in junior high, beginning in 7th grade. Before that, it's mostly women. And we look at the male teachers, or, whatever male faculty might have any involvement in our lives, and we think, you know what, that would be the boyfriend I would choose to have. If he would like me, I'd like to impress him in some way. He may not be my boyfriend, but I'd like to impress him, okay? And so we look to more mature people, for examples of how we want to act and dress. And, we think of ourselves as mature people, basically. So, if our attraction is to adult men who are already starting to show us attention from the age of 12 or 13, you really think we're going to go to school wearing cartoon shirts and advertising our interest in a cartoon? And, so here we have a mom at home not wanting to buy us any more dolls, because the house is already cluttered enough. And then we have teachers that we're somewhat attracted to. I'm not going to name names, but, we want to appeal to adults. We want to attract the attention of male teachers and impress female teachers with our maturity. You see, and that's another thing that people don't understand, is that girls do better in school because it's something that depends on the approval of others, specifically adults. Girls want to impress adults at a much younger age than boys do. And so when you want to impress adults, you want to impress women and attract men to a lesser extent. We don't really want to do anything with an adult man necessarily, but we want them to like us. We want to hear compliments from adults. The way to do that is not to wear cartoon characters on your shirt and advertise an interest in a show that's primarily aimed at younger children and or boys. It's just not the way to gain acceptance and approval from older people. And that's exactly what girls so desperately want. And in my case, I was a year older than most of my classmates, so I had no interest whatsoever in the boys in my class. You know, they could have come to school in South Park t-shirts and Simpson t-shirts and basically every cartoon that was popular at the time, and I wouldn't remember it. You know, I wouldn't care because they were not who I was focused on. I didn't care about their approval. I didn't care about them whatsoever. I cared about the approval of teachers. And of course, my mom, you know, and that's another thing that boys just don't understand, is that moms are very instrumental, you see, because girls actually care what other people think. That's one of the many reasons why we don't fart in our clothing, because we actually care. You know, one dirty look is enough to really crush our soul and make us not want to ever do that again. Whereas a boy, you pretty much have to hit them over the head with a 2x4 and they still may not get it, that it offends you. So no, I was never interested in cartoons except for the Rugrats, and that was primarily because my little sister was watching them. And I wanted to have something, you know, a way to bond with her because she was 9 years younger than me. And I wanted something, you know, for one thing, you know, I wanted a common bond, something we could talk about together. And the other thing is I've always had very specific obsessions. You know, my obsession with Rugrats was contingent on Angelica, which I got to thinking about that because I have all these Rugrat dolls, and it's like, if only I could bring them to the house, but then I don't know how to transport them in such a way that they won't melt in the heat. You know what I'm saying? The one thing I hate about the Gulf Coast is the weather. And September is still technically summer, even after the autumn equinox. And so it can be very hot in a vehicle with no air conditioning. Even just to go eat somewhere and leave them in the truck, they could melt in the heat, and that's what bothers me. So I'm thinking they may have to stay in this apartment until closer to November, you know, when we officially pack up. And I may have to bring things that are more essential, like clothing, to the house. So, you know, I'm a doll collector, not a cartoon enthusiast. And it was always a very specific obsession. Each time I got obsessed with a cartoon, it was specifically about a character, not the show. You know, not the process of animation. I couldn't care less about animation. And it's just always been a very character-specific obsession with every cartoon that I got into. And having a doll of said character, or, you know, drawing that character, has always been what kept me obsessed with the show. And in the case of Rugrats, you know, if they'd have written Angelica off the show, let's pretend for a moment that, let's say around the time I discovered the show, the new episodes, which I was a little bit worried that they would, with the Educating Angelica episode. Like, let's pretend for a moment that before they introduced Dill, they would have written her off the show with an episode like Educating Angelica. You know, they would have sent her to preschool and let that be the excuse not to have her on the show hardly ever again, you know, because she'd be in preschool and not have time to hang out with the babies, okay? So if they would have done that, let's imagine an alternative reality where they did that, well, I would have completely stopped watching the show. You know, I would have just totally lost interest in the show because she was the only reason. And once I would figure out that she was not in an episode, I would never watch that episode again because it was an obsession with Angelica, not Rugrats, okay? It's been like that with, you know, pretty much every cartoon I've ever obsessed on. It's more about the character than the show. And, you know, since I've become an adult, those have gotten fewer and further between. And I only rediscover old shows that I was obsessed with rather than, you know, getting into new things with new characters and new obsessions. But, you know, I'm just not really into animation in general. You know, if my sister wouldn't have gotten me into watching that show, I probably wouldn't know much about it. You know, I certainly wouldn't know the characters by name. But, you know, it's just always been like that. I'm a doll collector, not a cartoon enthusiast. And I think a lot of girls and women are very much like that. Once we get out of dolls and coloring books and, you know, things like keepsakes with the characters on them, it's like, what interest do we really have in the show? You know, I couldn't care less about animation. I mean, I would prefer live action, but even better than that, I prefer no TV whatsoever. You know, we're social creatures. We like to interact with real people in real time. You know, we like to go eat out, not stay locked up in our room and watch TV and play video games. So yeah, girls are just not into cartoons. We're more mature, and with every year, the gap widens. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, we may not start out that much further ahead of boys, you know, just like Mars and Earth and Venus, you know what I'm saying? That's why men are like into Mars and women are like into Venus, which Mars is finally coming back into view. So, you know, girls are more mature. Why everyone wants to deny that, especially girls and women, I don't know. You know, why aren't they proud to be more mature than boys? You know, why do they want to, you know, adopt everything, good, bad, or otherwise, that's associated with the male gender and think it's automatically better just because it's associated with men? You know what I'm saying? It's like even the advantages to being female are things that a lot of girls don't want to have just because they're associated with being female. That's really sad. And the other thing I always hated about cartoons is that the one token girl, you know, they'll often make her a tomboy who dresses femininely, whereas I'm the other way around. You know, I'm basically, you know, I mean, they often make it like a blonde girl who acts like a tomboy but dresses femininely, like Sailor Moon. But I'm the other way around. You know, I think I would be a dark-haired hunk of a man, short as I am, though. However, I'm feminine in the ways that I don't like spiders and I don't like getting dirty. You know what I'm saying? I'm feminine somewhat in behavior, but then I sort of dress androgynously and have short hair. So I'm the other way around. It's like I want to feel like a guy, so to speak, among girls instead of a girl among guys, but I guess that's not equivalent. You know, guy and girl are not really equivalent. It should be lady and guy. You know, I want to feel masculine around females, not feminine around males, is what I'm saying. Never been one of the guys, just always been a girl that didn't perform femininity to the extent that others did. So anyway, this video is getting way too long, so I'll go ahead and post it.